Good afternoon. This is Talking Drupal. We are a weekly chat about web design and development by three guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. We record this almost every Wednesday afternoon in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. Today is episode number 93. It is Wednesday, April 22nd. And today we're going to talk about easy security tips. And we've got the usual cast with us. Welcome, John Picozzi.
Good afternoon.
How are you, John?
I'm fabulous, actually. Doing well. Working a lot. Teaching my class at Johnston Wales and working on some cool stuff here at Oomph.
Great.
Yeah, staying busy.
Good. I noticed you were clean shaven.
Yeah, going into the summer, I like to purge my hair. So I start off by shaving and then move on to a buzz cut. So you'll see that in the coming weeks. You know, if you're interested in that, feel free to tune in regularly. And yeah, we're getting into the warmer weather, so
It's awesome, huh?
yeah, it is lovely out right now. So I'm happy to hear that.
So myself as well, I got this nice haircut today. Tim, one of my colleagues, pointed out yesterday while we were on a web chat, you have wings sticking out of your hair. You need a haircut. And all his hair sticking out the back. So I think my wife paid him to say that. We'll see. So got my haircut today. So I'm off. I've got a spring change as well. And we also have Nick Laughlin from Planet Fitness.
Good afternoon, our first sponsor. Good afternoon. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go for a haircut in the coming couple of days too.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever been to a Planet Fitness?
Yeah, where do you think I got the shirt?
Yeah.
I was a member for a couple of years, and then we switched gyms actually because there was a pool at the new gym. But yeah,
I just learned something new.
What's that? That I exercise occasionally?
The you tend to gym. Anyway, continue.
I like to work out, although I haven't been doing it much in the last couple of months. But yeah, looking forward to today's topic. Security is something that is sometimes difficult, no matter what platform you're on. And when I first started out in Drupal, I knew next to nothing about it. So hopefully listeners today can get some tips and get an idea of where to get more information.
Yeah, so we have a few announcements before we start in the topic today. One is that we've moved to a new schedule for the show that we're going to be recording every other week for the future, near future, long term, we don't know. But we've switched the schedule to every other week that you can expect a show from us. So that's starting today. So we will not record another show until 2 weeks from today. So that's one. Announcement. Second announcement is we have been getting some great feedback in through our email account, which is talkingdrupal@gmail.com. And if you have questions that you'd like answered on the show, and we have some of those that have come in recently that we'll be answering in future shows, please send an email and we could maybe answer a few questions randomly or build a whole show around your topic, which we're going to do with one of the long questions that came in recently. So thanks for that feedback. You can always also go to iTunes and give us a review there. We appreciate that as well. We've got some great reviews there. You could keep them coming.
Only positive reviews, though.
Oh, stop that, John. Let's see. What other announcements do we have? Anything else? No, let's get started.
I actually got one. I got one.
Okay.
I was going to mention this earlier. But Oomph is actually working with Getty Images on a Getty Images module for Drupal. Getty Images doesn't have a module for Drupal yet, and Oomph is working with them to build one. We actually have a sandbox site set up, and we've actually started going through the application process to become a real module or a full module, however you want to put it. Anybody out there that is interested in reviewing the module, taking a look at the application, please go ahead and do that, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And if you are out there and have the ability to promote it or give us the ability to promote it, that would be lovely as well. So we're looking for some community support there.
That's great, John. I recently started tinkering around with, in my spare time, I'm not sure when that is, but Squarespace. I used Squarespace a long time ago. I set up a little test account a few weeks ago, and they had directly connected to Getty Images, where if you're building a site with their template and there's a spot for an image, you can upload your own image, or you can click this Getty Images button, and it takes you to Getty Images, but it's really integrated well, where you can pick an image from the Getty site, it pulls it back into the Squarespace site, and we'll just keep a watermark on it until you pay for it.
That's essentially what we're doing as well. We have the ability for you to do two things: get watermarked images, and then also put in your account credentials and get actual download the images to the server and reuse them as you see fit or as the terms allow you. So
fantastic idea, fantastic.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're working with Getty. We're really happy about it, but we definitely need the community support to get over the hurdle of getting a full release out.
And that's testing it. What is it? What community support do you exactly need?
So the application process for a module, once you're confident
on the Drupal side.
On the Drupal side, yep.
Okay,
once you're confident in the code, it has to go for through an application or approval process, and the outcome of that is that either we get the ability to enable it as a full release, a real module, if you will, or somebody does that for us. Right now, the application is actually at the reviewed and tested by the community phase, so it's one step away from that. We're just looking for that extra push to get it all the way through.
Oh, okay, great. Good luck with that. I'll jump on board.
Yeah, and also testing and any feedback that anybody has is greatly appreciated as well.
Excellent. So today show easy security. So security is never easy, but I think our objective today is to try to touch on things that we feel are relatively easy to address. Things to take you from not knowing anything or not dealing with anything to security to at least be doing what we would call the minimum kind of stuff. And for some listeners, these might be obvious, and for others, it may be all new material, which is why we think the show is important, because we get these questions often, not just through the show, but at meetups and kind of things. Is what are the steps you can take just to at least get to the base level of feeling secure?
Yeah, with this topic, it actually came to mind for me as a blog post, and we put it out on the Umthink blog. So if you go to umthink.com/blog, you can find "Don't Hack My Drupal, Man," which is a blog post that I wrote on this topic. But I thought it would be really interesting to talk about it with you guys, because I think it's something nowadays that's really becoming commonplace, unfortunately, is, our site got hacked, our database got compromised. We all have seen it with, Home Depot, Target, Google, LinkedIn. Everybody seems to be getting hacked, and there are some really easy things that you can do that people don't really think about to kind of secure your site and to hopefully prevent against some of these things.
So the first topic on our list, and we're not even going to go into detail here, we're just going to point you somewhere else, but backup, right? People should be backing up. We did a whole show on backup, talkingdrupal.com/047 about backing up. You can go back and listen to that if you want to learn more about backups, but if you are not backing up, you're doing the first sin in terms of security. Because if there's an issue that you have, and you need to roll back, or your site is gone, you need to get back to it. So I'm not sure there's anything else needs to be said about backup. So
Yeah, it's one of the primary recovery methods, but
yeah.
Listen to our show on backups.
Exactly. So let's move on to the next main topic here, which is administration configuration. Go.
So, go now. Admin config is one of the easiest things in Drupal, right? You install Drupal, you get this crazy admin that lets you do all of these wonderful things. And there are certain things in there, certain tasks you can perform to kind of lock down your Drupal instance. Something a lot of people don't realize is on a default Drupal install, the first thing that happens is Drupal actually enables the ability for people to create accounts on your site. Now, I am fairly certain that they require administrator approval, but still, that could be a method for somebody to gain access to your site that you don't want. So one of the first things that I always do is I go into the account settings and say nobody can register for an account. Obviously, if the site requires account registration, then you have to set that up and put things in place to prevent that. But for most of our sites, we're not doing user login that often, so I definitely shut that off and make it so an administrator has to create a user account for somebody. People can't just go in and create their own user accounts.
Yeah, and that brings up actually a good point to keep in mind when you're thinking about security, and that is to be more secure, you want to be as least permissive as possible. You want to remove all permissions and only grant permissions back that are necessary for the site to function. And as John just said, sometimes that means anybody can create an account. Sometimes that means only administrators can make an account. But you always want to start from the position where you have the least permissions possible, so that the target on the website is as small as possible. And that's what we're going to be talking about, making that target as small as possible. One of the next big things, probably one of the more important things that you can do as a site administrator to remain secure, is use a non-obvious super admin username and password. So many times people start their website up and the first account is admin or administrator. Setting that to something that isn't known is the first step. When you use admin or administrator, your bots try that username all the time, and then the password needs to be something that's complex and not easily guessed.
Yeah, so there's two pieces of information someone needs to get into that account. It's a username and a password. If you avoid using the common username right up front, you've really helped yourself right up at the beginning, because anyone trying to hack you is going to try admin, administrator, sysadmin, all of those things, root, all those kind of things. Get away from any of those, and use coffee cup or something. I mean, whatever the name be, but change that thing.
The other thing that just came to mind here, and I think the WhiteHouse.gov website did this. Any content management system has a generic login path that's used. For Drupal, it's /user. For WordPress, it's WP admin. One thing that WhiteHouse.gov did was actually change that so that the login path was not the generic Drupal login path. So that's another approach that you could take. Obviously, the password and username is very important, but making it a little bit harder for people that are trying to do you harm to get to that login screen could be a good call as well.
And it's important to note that this isn't something you can change just in the admin config that we're talking about right now. Switching where the login is a huge step towards making your site very difficult to crack, but it's also it's also not the easiest thing to do. I mean, I've looked into it a couple of times. There's no simple path to that. The next thing is goes back to the earlier point, and that's setting user permissions appropriately. There's a couple of user permissions that are really important to be aware of who you're providing that permission to. For example, one of those is administrate users, and another one is grant user permissions. So, for example, if you go through and make your site as secure as possible, but then you grant the authenticated role or the anonymous role the ability to manage users, then you've basically just opened a huge gate for them. They can go in, they can create a new account, they can set new permissions for that account, and they can basically take over the site. So it's important as you're granting permissions to users to determine which users on the site are trusted and which are not. And then really think about, by granting these permissions, what am I allowing this group of people to do on the website, and determining whether or not that's a security risk. Sometimes it seems like it's fairly daunting, since the permissions tables on Drupal get very, very large very, very quickly. But it's also very important. I mean, it's very important to be aware of what you're granting and who's accessing that power. The next admin level thing, this is one of those ones that is sometimes a bit more abstract, and that would be text formats. Text formats is, if you're not aware, it's what allows you to, when editing content, choose whether it's full HTML, filtered HTML. It allows certain tags, remove certain tags from the text. If you're new to security, that may seem like something that has nothing to do with security, but it's actually a very important part in your tool set. If you're allowing untrusted users to use full HTML or another text filter that you've created that allows whatever tags you want, you might be opening your website to risk. For example, if you give somebody that's untrusted the ability to put any tags, they can put script tags, run JavaScript, or even run PHP on your server and gain control of the site that way. So it's very important that you're careful about what text filters anonymous users and untrusted users have access to.
And
because you can give them. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it goes hand in hand with the permissions, because some sites, it is important or it is necessary to have the PHP input format or text format enabled. But you want to make sure that whoever has the ability to add PHP to those text fields is definitely a trusted user. Never give that to an anonymous user or just an authenticated user, because that can definitely wreak havoc.
So the last thing I want to mention in this section, and I don't think we touched, was if you have multiple people that need system administrator role access, don't share with them the super user admin. Give them a user account and give them administrator role. Don't hand out that super user to people easily.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing up here is an important point too. It's the audit trail. So it's one of those things where, in case something goes wrong, you need to be able to scroll back through the history of the site and determine how it went wrong. And if everybody's sharing the same account, you don't know who logged in and left the door open, or who compromised the site. But if everybody has separate logins, then you can say, hey, John left the admin account logged in at the library, and somebody went in and created an account for themselves and took over the site. So it's important that you have that audit control. You can also, I think you can learn a little bit about some of the reasons for this in our PCI compliance show. A lot of what we've learned about security has come from looking at security from an e-commerce perspective, and that's not the main perspective we're talking about today, but if you want to take a look at that show, listen to that podcast. You can learn a little bit about audit trails and why they're important.
It's funny. One of the things that I always train or say at the end of my trainings when I'm training clients on how to edit their site is make sure when you're done, you log out. Because a lot of companies, people use other people's computers, that sort of thing, and it really, Drupal will keep you logged in for a really long time. So, if somebody else is using your computer and they get on there, they can really, they can start messing around with the website, and maybe it's unintentional, but it's always best to log out, I think.
And Talking Drupal /036 is the PCI compliance show. If that's another good listen with
Rick Manelius.
Rick Manelius, thank you.
Manelius.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The name escaped me for a minute there. All right, so let's move on to some things you can do with modules. Modules that you can use that would help you. Now let's try to stay easy too here, right? Let's focus on easy.
So yeah, modules are a pretty easy thing, I think, because most of them are just plug and play, drop them in and check some checkboxes or set some configuration, and you're off and running. One that I actually have used recently was the Drupal password policy. So what this does is it allows you to basically set a password policy for your password fields. So when users are signing up for an account or you're creating an account, there are certain criteria that that person has to meet in their password. This is pretty common nowadays with most password fields where they say, oh, you need to use one special character, one uppercase letter, one number, and you can't use your first name or something like that.
And we all hate it.
Yeah. And
you know what I actually you know what I hate more? The ones that are, I was just saying this the other day to some coworkers, the ones that are unstandard or the ones that don't really enforce that type of policy. There are a couple of places that I log in that the password doesn't accept special characters, and I'm like, why? Why doesn't this password accept special characters? I wish there was a standardization on here's what the passwords should be standardized on to make them secure.
Well, there is. The problem is not everybody follows it, just like with emails. And you have to actually be careful with this one because sometimes it can make it more secure. Sometimes it can actually counterintuitively make your site less secure because what happens is if the requirements are too restrictive, you end up forcing smaller sets of characters, forcing smaller sets of passwords, and while it gets more complex for humans, two things happen. One, it gets easier for computers to crack, and two, people end up writing the password down to remember what it is, which opens up the whole social attack, which is becoming more and more popular.
Are you guys using any password tools yourselves? LastPass, one password, any tools like that?
I use LastPass, and I would be lost without it.
Yeah, me too. Have you gotten to the point, Nick, that you could not tell what a password is if you did not have LastPass installed?
With some websites, I don't generally. I have a pattern I use for passwords. So what I do is I have a section of the password that's in the beginning that nobody knows about.
Right.
That's 8 to 10 characters long.
You have a scheme that you create.
Yeah, and then I have a section that's specific to the website. So it works really well for me. And actually, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, another way that
another
way that this occasionally is counterintuitive. I run into this all the time with Plesk. Plesk has a terrible way of determining whether or not a password is secure, and I can input a password that's 35 characters long, and it doesn't matter if it's, if it has special characters or not. A 35 character password will take something like 700 years to crack, if not more. But it will look at that and be like, well, you don't have a number and a special character and something else. But you can then put in a password that's 6 characters long that has the 3 special characters, and oh, this is fine. And
Yeah.
so
So,
you need to be very careful when you're doing the password.
side note about Plesk, I actually tend to shut off the password hardness in Plesk to enter the password that I want, and then turn it back on for the users. Because it is absolutely the most ridiculous thing that I've ever encountered. I'll type a password that 100 sites will say is strong, or a pattern that 100 sites will say is strong, and it'll go, yeah, this password's
Medium.
it's all right.
It's rage-inducing.
I'm like, dude, yeah, let's not go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's definitely annoying.
We're already in the hole, so let's get out of it quick. So the recommendation that I would make is if you're not using a tool like LastPass or an equivalent, totally check it out. I mean, it can give you much better security on the number of sites that you're dealing with. It does create a little bit of a crutch that you need to have it in order to log into somewhere, but in the end, I think you'll be a lot better in your security. So what other security modules in Drupal have you guys used and recommend checking out?
The next one on the list is actually login security, and this one is the best way to describe it is it's like better flood protection for Drupal. And I don't know if we don't have the flood control module on the list, but so everybody is aware, or at least should be aware, that after five failed login attempts, basically Drupal blocks you based on IP address. What login security does is it basically does the same thing, but it gives you more flexibility in how many times a certain person can log into a specific username or from a specific IP address. So it kind of opens up those options for you and narrows down your ability for people to kind of guess account passwords or brute force an account, because you can say, oh, like block them after 10 tries or 5 tries or whatever you want it to be. So that's pretty useful. I've used it before, and it works pretty well, and gives you more options as to not just to block by IP address, but to block by other factors.
Hey John, episode 51, talking Drupal 051, we talked about flood control module and the flood unblock module. So there's more information there.
Awesome.
Yeah, another module that's pretty helpful is the security review module. It does some basic checks of your installation and gives you an idea of any settings you can change. It's similar to the SEO checklist module, I believe. It helps you. It just helps you keep an eye on different security pieces of the website, and it's pretty thorough, and a good module to take a look at.
Is that a regular practice for you to run that? It hasn't been for me.
Me either.
Being honest, I mean, I feel like we've been dealing with security for a long time, that we have our things that we do to make sure a site is secure, but maybe we should sort of roll that into our practice of testing things.
Yeah, it hasn't become a regular thing for me either, and much for the same reason. But one of the reasons for it is, no matter how good at security you are, there's a possibility for you to get something on site X.
Absolutely.
If you have something just verifying that you did everything, that just helps. And you have other people looking at it, so they may add new features to it, in 6 months that check something that you never thought of, and then you can go back on the other sites and verify it. But it's pretty helpful. Another module that kind of helps with the login piece is reCAPTCHA and associated modules, Mollum, Honeypot, etc. It's more related towards the spam, but if your site is a big target of spam, you're more likely to get on the list to be targeted for security issues as well. So preventing unauthorized access is certainly helpful in security.
And the reCAPTCHA module actually just kind of got a facelift by Google. So now it uses, if you use reCAPTCHA, the version 2 of reCAPTCHA, it actually uses Google's new algorithm that basically, Google, the master of all algorithms, basically uses a bunch of different factors to figure out if you're a bot or not. And then what they'll do is basically give you a checkbox on the login form. And when you check that checkbox, it'll run a check, and it'll say, oh, you're a person, and give you access to the form, or it'll challenge you further if it can't determine. And the challenges are, matching pictures. Oh, here's a picture of pasta. Find the other 2 pictures of pasta. Or, hey, help us determine what house number this is. So it's interesting how they've kind of re-engineered CAPTCHA to not be as annoying as like, hey, here's a really poorly written word. Tell us what it is.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the other cool things behind reCAPTCHA is it does it's helping with address location, so that when you see like what's this house number, it's pictures from Google Maps and helping identify where houses on the street are. But it also the other the initial charter of reCAPTCHA was they would scan books and then post words from the book, so you're helping machine translation of words. Actual historical books. So it's it's a really cool project, and it certainly helps reduce the amount of stress and spam on your server. For sure, highly recommend it. It's what we used actually to solve the NetCamp issues we were having a few weeks ago with spam users.
So this next topic we get into here is controversial because I'm not sure it falls into the easy category, but we felt like it was something we should mention. We start talking about code, is how to secure your code. And the first one here is use Git to do that.
Yeah, so the first couple categories was easy for site administrators. The next couple are easy for systems administrators or developers. Yeah, the first step I think in security is use Git, number one, first and foremost, and it needs to be from the beginning.
Why is Git? Why is Git a security thing?
So for me, it's really recovery and audit trail. So the ability to log into a server and say Git status and see if anything has changed on the server that you didn't do. Now it's not perfect because if something gets into the files directory, it's not tracked. And typically if it gets into the settings.php, unless you're using Aqua or something, that's not tracked. And typically you don't want to track settings.php or files because then your Git repo will get huge and you'll have your database passwords in the repo.
So for those people, Nick, for those people that aren't using Git and aren't clear about what's happening here, right? Is Git is a change management system, I guess is the best way to describe it. If you have it installed on your server, like your production server, to manage your code, you can go into Git from a command line, per se, and say Git status command, which will show you everything that's been changed on the server. So if you've been hacked, it's very easy to see. If you've been hacked in a way that your source code has changed, let's be clear about that. If someone has put a hack on your system that's changed your source code, using a command of Git status would show you a list of all the files that have changed since you've last updated it. Yeah. It's a very quick way to find a hack from code.
Yeah. It's important to note that, like we said, you need to have the Git piece installed before you're hacked. I mean, if you
Right.
it's not something like, oh, I've been hacked, let me install Git and see what's
Right.
changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not going to find it. But it lists very quickly and very easily, like, these three files have changed, and then there's other commands you can use, and it'll even show you the line numbers that were changed. I mean, you can very quickly see what the problems are with the source code.
So it goes. I mean, it goes back along the lines of backing things up and making sure that you have that trail to recover from if something goes wrong. Um, the next two actually come out of my blog post. And I think they're pretty easy things for anybody to do, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think. And the first one, you don't even really have to do anything.
It's what not to do.
Exactly. It's anti-advice. Don't hack core. We in the Drupal community feel very strongly about not hacking core, and it's a bad thing to do overall, but it's even worse for security, I think, because once you have hacked core, you've changed the code base that everybody else in the Drupal community is looking at. And people aren't aware of what changes you have made, and they could be opening up a security vulnerability that you're not testing for. I mean, Drupal core has a whole security team. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But they're looking for vulnerabilities. They're looking for issues, and they're tracking them down. If you're hacking core, and you're not, nobody's looking at that hack. Nobody's saying like, oh, Jimbo hacked this. Let me take a look and see if it's still secure. So, yeah, don't do it. Don't do it.
And if you need to hack core, by the way, using Git would help you understand the changes you made, and keep your hacks to things that have nothing to do with security. I mean, stay away from real serious sort of things. Just for our video users, could you raise your hands if you've hacked core? Oh, my hand is the only one up. Ugh. Okay.
Yeah, I actually, well, I should
We'll
raise my
actually
hand.
be we'll actually be taking your Drupal card and burning it later.
Oh.
When
Okay.
I first started, I hacked core.
I gave you guys such a great example of why core needed to be hacked a few weeks ago. I mean,
Yeah, I believe I've made changes, but I've since gone away from that. But yeah, your example was actually a valid one. Yours was changing the message on the
Yeah.
IP banning
there was no way to change
screen.
it. Right.
Yeah, there's no hook, and because Drupal doesn't bootstrap at that point, so
Yeah. We don't need to go back to that, but yeah. So, John, that's a great tip. Don't hack core. I mean, the amount of times that's ever happened for me is so small, it's ridiculous. And which ties into the next one too, which is core module updates too, right? Or hacks.
Yeah. So the other thing that we see a lot is clients come to us and say, hey, I keep getting this message when I log in that my site's out of, needs to be updated, and that there are security updates. And again, the security team is working hard to secure modules and to secure core, and they're putting out these updates to say like, hey, this needs to be fixed because it's a security issue. Well, if you're not doing those updates, then your site's not secure. And is this an easy fix? Sometimes it can be harder than most, but I think it's a pretty easy fix for people to be able to say like, yes, my site's secure because I didn't hack core and all my modules are up to date. There's no reason. A great example of this is like, you leave your house, but you leave a window open. Now you know that the window's open, and you just go, I'm going to leave it open, and hopefully nothing happens. Well, if somebody breaks into your house, that's a security vulnerability. You knew about it. You could have done something about it, but you didn't. Module updates and core updates fall along that same line for me. And the reason I say that they're easy is because, if you're if you built this site, you have a pretty good idea of how to update modules in core. If you built the site and you don't, you can read Drupal.org and get that information. They have great tutorials on how to do that. The other thing is too that companies like ours have service agreements that will update your modules in core for you and do feature enhancements and all that sort of thing. So there are definitely resources out there to make it very easy on you to be able to keep up with the security updates that happen.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice. Keeping the code up to date is the #1 thing you can do probably. The next one may seem obvious to some people and not so obvious to others, but that would be if you're starting on a new site, use Drupal 7, not Drupal 6. There's several really good reasons for that. One of the primary ones is something we've touched on a couple times, and that's the security team only supports the 2 most recent releases of Drupal. So the security team only reviews Drupal 7 and Drupal 6. And they give attention proportionate to the number of people using the sites. So if you go on Drupal.org, you can see usage statistics. And Drupal 7 currently is reporting 978,000 installs. Drupal 6 is reporting 144,000 installs. And Drupal 5 is reporting somewhere around 2,000 installs. So Drupal 5 isn't reviewed by security whatsoever. And between Drupal 7 and Drupal 6, Drupal 7 is getting approximately 5 times as much attention. So if you want to be secure, it's important that you're working on the newest version, the newest release, because that's the release that gets reviewed the most. Drupal 7 also has major improvements in password security over Drupal 6. And much better notifications from the update module when there's a security release. Anything else to say about the Drupal differences between Drupal 7 and Drupal 6?
One thing to mention here, I was actually just reading an article on the latest version of PHP. I think it's PHP 5.5. Being better for security, and Drupal 6 I don't believe will support that version of PHP, so that's something that to consider as well. That we're going to talk about next, actually, a little bit about server security, but that's not really one of those easy things that you can do other than buying hosting that already has that version of PHP on it. And then installing Drupal and working that way.
Yeah, and to be clear, Drupal 7 works on 5.4 and 5.5, but it's not perfect. There's some issues with that, so don't just upgrade PHP willy-nilly. I mean, it needs to be looked at.
Well, Nick, I don't think you should do anything to your website willy-nilly, but it's the internet, so people can do what they want.
And when we're talking about this level of easy stuff, I mean, sometimes you purchase hosting configuration and you really don't know what you're getting in PHP up front, and you get what is installed there, and sometimes it's hard to do anything other than that. So
yeah, definitely.
All
right, so let's talk about servers and DNS things.
Yeah, so servers and DNS can be kind of scary to some people. And Steven's shaking his head no, because servers are not scary to a guy that runs a company that does hosting. But servers and DNS can be scary to some people. There are some really easy, and I mean really easy, like buying services and asking for instructions on how to set them up. Ways just to help in your security. One of the first ones is looking at a service like Cloudflare. And basically what Cloudflare is a content delivery network that has a security layer built into it. What they do is they monitor their traffic and look for patterns of malicious use and hackery, if you will, and then they mitigate that. So setting up your site to use Cloudflare is as easy as signing up for Cloudflare and then pointing your domain to them as opposed to your web server. And they can give you instructions on how to do that and kind of walk you through it. There are other services that do something very similar and protect you in those sorts of ways. I'm just talking about Cloudflare because that's the one that I've used in the past.
Yeah, so there's Cloudflare is really well known for their DDoS prevention and their services as CDN. There's a second part to the service, and that's what we're talking about today, and that's the web application firewall. So if you don't want to use Cloudflare, you want to use something else, that's what you want to look for is a WAF, web application firewall. And what it does is, as John said, is it takes a look at the traffic coming in and performs checks against that. And for example, Cloudflare's added some rules to their firewall recently to mitigate some of the cross-site scripting attacks that were happening to Drupal as a result of the that database injection vulnerability that came out a few months ago. So if you're using Cloudflare and Cloudflare sees traffic coming from a certain location and the traffic is looking like it's exploiting that vulnerability, Cloudflare will block it before it even hits your servers. So it can certainly help remove a lot of the trouble that you have. They also do something where they switch, they block access to SSH. They just block all sorts of access to your site and just prevent traffic from harming your site.
One of the things that I always wonder about, since John just mentioned that we provide hosting services, so we use a product called Photogate. It's a hardware vendor, a firewall hardware vendor, that protects our network. And we protect it from a lot of things that, on a hardware level, that Cloudflare does. DDoS attacks, content filtering, we have blacklists, real-time blacklist lookups and stuff to protect the websites that we host. It's never clear to me when you get services from any of the hosting companies, at the price point of $50 a month or whatever, what level of those kinds of filtering that you get. And I do believe they're doing something. They're doing some stuff to protect you.
So Media Temple actually integrates with Cloudflare, and when you get a Media Temple account, you actually have the ability to enable Cloudflare right from your control panel for free. So you get the free level of Cloudflare right from Media Temple on your DV server, so a dedicated server.
Right, but that's a third party. You have to switch your DNS to them, and it's going through their services before yours. I do believe that most of the hosting companies are providing some level of protection for you, but it's not documented because they're trying to just protect themselves as well, right?
Yeah.
Not just protecting you, but protecting themselves. So there are hardware solutions and we're getting out of easy now, so maybe we just don't talk about this anymore, but there are hardware solutions that you can use in a managed service environment, or if you have a website that you really need to protect, there's physical hardware and software solutions you can install with your website that will do a lot of additional of this filtering to protect you from these attacks. And we
you can actually
because
hire Steven to sit there and look at all your traffic and say yes or no to it.
Exactly. That's what I do from 5 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning. I monitor traffic on the internet.
Each individual GET request.
Yes, that's right. They go through me first. And I have to approve them before they hit the website.
So the next thing that is a level up from Steven would be the SSL certificate. Simply enough, buying an SSL certificate and putting your website behind the HTTPS protocol is something really easy that can protect you from people kind of sniffing around on your website and figuring out what users are doing. Most hosting providers offer some method for you to get an SSL certificate enabled on your server or on your domain pretty easily. And you can also buy one from companies like GeoTrust, or there are various other companies out there that sell them. So, and they can give you instructions on how to install it yourself if you're so inclined.
I do think it's an easy plus scenario. Like, I've seen situations where it's not always so easy to get it working, but it probably falls into one of the things you can do to protect yourselves easily, but it's not always so easy to get it running.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that needs that occasion, depending on what kind of SSL certificate you need. For most people, it will be easy, but there's many cases where it won't be. Right?
Yeah, I mean that I think any of the tips that we have given today are solely based on the fact that experiences may vary. I mean, if you're running a website that has 45 different domains and all sorts of crazy configuration, some of these things may be harder than most. But I've always, I'm a Media Temple customer, and anytime I've needed to set up an SSL on my Media Temple service, I've been able to buy it directly through them, have them set it up, and from the Drupal side, basically enabled the Secure Pages module and have it just do what it needs to do. So, I think it is one of those easy steps that you should take to secure your website. But experiences may vary. That's something you just have to be aware of.
So the next thing on our list is DDoS Arrest.
Yeah. So DDoS Arrest is actually a service to prevent denial of service attacks.
It's a service, meaning it's a third party?
Yep. So how they work is you send your DNS to them, and similarly to what Cloudflare is doing, they're just verifying that your traffic is actually accurate and that you're not being DDoSed at any given time. And then they have filters to protect your site against that type of attack.
Can you use them and Cloudflare at the same time?
That is a great question. I do not know the answer.
I suspect it's no.
I'm gonna go with no on that because they're both DNS level solutions. So I mean, I guess you could send it through one and then through another, but that seems like it would just be kind of weird and slow things down quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them.
The next one on our list is one that is important, but has even Drupal developers scratching their heads sometimes with the information out there. I mean,
so you mean it's wicked easy?
Wicked easy, and that's server file permissions. So Drupal by default checks permissions on a couple of files. It checks, the files directory, the private files directory, and it checks the settings.php file. However, it doesn't check any other directories or files. And it's important that you restrict permissions. If you don't know much about servers, you have 3 levels of permission on each file. There's more, but you basically have 3 levels of permission on each file. You have the owner permission, the group permission, and everybody's permission. The owner is who created the file, who owns the file. The group is the most common example is like Apache, the Apache group. The web server. It might be more than one user, but they all have the same level of permission. It's kind of like users in Drupal versus roles. And then finally, everybody. And you can give permissions to read the files, access the files, write to the files, delete the files, whatever. It's important that you restrict the permissions appropriately so that somebody outside the site can't access the file and perform actions on it. There are if you search around, there are functions that you can run that will scroll through the site and set their appropriate permissions, um, and certainly help you along that way. But we haven't found a way that just checks and says yes, your permission is good or not. The most important one though is the settings.php file. I mean that's critical.
So we're gonna post. I think we're gonna post some of these notes that we have on setting your file permissions in the show notes, or maybe we'll just give you a link to do that because we have them here in our show notes now. But I think we're probably better off linking to a blog post somewhere. The last thing here we've got is monthly scans. I think I threw that in there because there are services out there that you can subscribe to for relatively small dollars that you give your URL and they'll do a scan of your website to check it against SQL injections, check it against all kinds of the OS level security, permission level security, and it's really worth doing if you have a site that you're concerned about it being compromised, and it's worth checking into.
Absolutely.
Are you guys running scans on your sites? Do you have a service that you use? We were using McAfee for years. I think they were recently bought by someone else again. So every one of the sites that we host gets scanned monthly. And then we deal with whatever issues come up. Just so it's more of us feeling good about any of the sites that we're hosting. Do you guys use any services?
I know that we do scans, and I know
you don't know what they are, right?
I've gotten emails from our DevOps team that have been like, "Hey, did you make this change? Is this change legit?" I do not recall what the service they're using is called, though.
Yeah, same here. I don't. It's not a typical part of my tool set, but I'm working on a project right now that's going to go through OAuth verification and OS verification. So it's definitely next level.
Yeah,
security.
it's not a standard practice. I mean, for people to get monthly scans for the sites is not a standard practice, and there's a very small percentage of people that probably do it. And it's really not necessary all the time either. Like if you have a Drupal site, we're talking about easy security things today. Having a scan, I added it to the list because it's easy to set up, but it's probably not necessary in most scenarios. But it's an option. It's an option to think about, and it's easy to set up, which is why I added it to this list.
A lot of times you can get a lot of false positives with that too. I know Media Temple offers some sort of utility that scans your site, and I actually get a lot of false positives with that. That's basically anytime I change a file, it shoots out a message saying like, "Hey, was this legit?" And it can be worrisome, especially if you don't really know how to attack those problems should they arise. So
yeah, I mean it's definitely like you said, it's one of those things where you can end up with a lot of false positives. That scan is currently the bane of my existence for one of my clients. I've actually forgot about it until you just mentioned it because it ends up becoming noise. I performed an upgrade on the server, and it tripped something in that scan, and now every week I get a message saying, "Hey, the server's compromised." And I went through with a fine-tooth comb. I paid a couple of other experts to review it, and we paid for that Media Temple servers to go through it, and everybody went through and said, "Yeah, there's nothing here. There's no problem. There's no suspicious activity." But it still gets flagged every month because it tweaked it upgraded Plesk or something.
Yeah,
So you guys are devaluing the monthly scan. I mean,
no, not at all.
Right,
I think that if you're paying for a service and they're doing
you get what you pay for.
That's definitely valuable. But sometimes the security scans that come with your hosting can render false positives, and just being aware of that I think is important.
All right, so let's move on to our next category, which is news and alerts.
Yeah, so everybody wants to know, getting back into kind of Drupal specific, where they can get news and alerts or updates about potential security issues. There are a couple of ways that I do it, and again, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. I do follow the Drupal security team on Twitter. So they have a Twitter account, Drupal Security, pretty easy, that basically they tweet out any security issues that they come across. You can also go to the security page on Drupal.org, so Drupal.org/security, and that'll actually give you a whole bunch of information on Drupal security, as well as taking you to the security team's website, where you can sign up for a newsletter that will basically email you every Wednesday at between, say, noon and 3 p.m., depending on where you live, that week's security issues. So that's really helpful to be able to look down that list and say, oh, I have this module installed on 6 sites, and there's a cross-site scripting vulnerability. I should definitely look at that a little bit harder.
Sure. I'm a huge fan of the email. It separates them out by module, so it allows you, like you said, very quickly to just scan your email and be like, yes, I use that one, yes, I use that one. I would say majority of the time it's really small use case modules that I've never installed, but it's good to keep an eye on it because at least once a month a big module comes through, like views or entity API or something, and it's it's time to run through and update everything. I've found them very, very helpful.
Right.
One thing I would say about that is I would love it if the security team would combine those into one email. They just get sent out, and that way I can peruse down the list and say, I don't have any of those modules installed, I can ignore this, or instead of getting on some days 12 or 15 different emails about modules I don't really care about.
Yeah, I'm the exact opposite. I'm in the other camp. I prefer the separate emails because
then Isn't it the same thing? I mean, you cruise through your email and you see the module that you don't care about.
Yeah. The difference is if it's just one digest email, it's very easy to miss that email. When every week you get 5 to 10 emails, you look at it and you see, oh, the security modules have come through.
And the advantage I see is that if it's independent, the ones that you don't care about you delete, the ones that you do care about you keep. So now you have back in your inbox only the ones that are important to you, as opposed to this big digest that only a quarter of them make sense for you.
Yeah, and they always come out right away, so it's not like you're getting them random days of the week. Like,
yeah, you get hammered with
them. If you're in a forum or something and you don't have daily digests on, you'll get random messages all throughout the day. But in that case, I like digest. But for the security stuff, I prefer separate emails.
Right.
Personally.
All right. So I have no idea if our tips were easy today. Thinking back to our conversation, I mean, security is never easy. I'm not sure if these tips were easy, but I do think we've hit on a few things that will make people's sites more secure, and if they're not thinking about it, we'll get them heading in the right direction, which is all we hope to do, really, right?
Absolutely.
Let's move on to our module of the week. I think I posted this one, didn't I?
Yep.
Web form reply. So we all use web form in some form or another, which are collecting content from typically anonymous users online in a form, and you're storing in that, and then often that web form content is emailed to someone either in the organization or back to the customer. And this module is very helpful in the situation where someone's filled out a web form on a contact me form online, and it comes to someone internally in the company. And they want the ability to just click reply to that user and respond to the email or respond to the form that came in. If you do not install this module, the only way you could do this is you could set the send from email to be the person who filled out the form if they filled in their email address. The problem you have with that is that there'll be all kinds of spam issues, in terms of the email is coming from a domain that doesn't match the email address, and that email may never get sent or get flagged as spam. So a way to address that is when you set up the form, if you install this module, you can have the from address be your website, but the reply address be the email address that the person entered in the form. So it allows your administrator to get the email, hit their reply button, and it would go back to the person who sent the email. Is that clear? Am I being clear with that?
Yeah, I think this is going to become a highly used module by me.
You definitely cleared it up at the end there, because I was definitely like, well, you could do that by using the email field, but
yeah. So
at the end you cleared it up for me.
All right, good. Yeah. So the problem we've had is that we have customers that we moved them from an old system to Drupal recently, and they were very accustomed to having hit the reply button, but we were getting lots of spams in that situation. So it's a great module. Install it. All it does is it adds another field to the web form that you can do reply to, and it works perfectly. We've been using it for a few months. It's a great way to do it.
I'm gonna have to look into it deeper.
Yeah,
it's a common problem.
Yeah, it's a very common problem. It's a very simple solution too. Thank you, web form, once again. Right. All right, guys, we are at the end of the show. We have a few notes, a few announcements. We are a bi-weekly show again, so you will not hear from us again until 2 weeks from today. So thank you for listening. Again, if you have any questions, please email us at talkingdrupal@gmail.com. We're also thinking about doing some sponsorship for the show. So if you're interested in sponsoring an episode, you could also email us at talkingdrupal@gmail.com, and we could start that conversation of what a sponsorship might look like. Any other announcements, guys?
Not from this side of the table.
Go check out the application for the Getty Images module.
And there's a link for it in the show notes already, so you can find it there as well. So, John, where can people find you online?
Oh, man. So if you want to read the blog post that inspired today's show, you can find that at oomphinc.com/blog. And you can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi.
How about next month? Where could they see you in person?
Ooh, if they wanted to come to Drupal PVD in the Oomphinc offices in Providence, Rhode Island, I will
be there.
Actually, not be there. I might be actually coming in from DrupalCon. We'll see. We'll see if we can do maybe a hangout from DrupalCon for a little bit. So you could see me in the hangout.
So, John, I was trying to get you to say this, so I'll say it for you.
Oh, thanks.
If you're at DrupalCon next month and you'd like to hook up with John Picozzi,
that's the one.
Just reach out to him on Twitter at John Picozzi, and you can connect with him face-to-face in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So Steven was throwing a fastball there. I was looking for more of the softball.
Okay.
So yeah, I will definitely be at DrupalCon. And I look forward to meeting all of our wonderful listeners.
Awesome. How about you, Nick?
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, Nicxvan. Send me a tweet if you have any questions. We'll make sure we get them on the show as well. All
right, great. And I'm Stephen Cross, Twitter at Stephen Cross with a PH. And you can also look me up at parallaxinfotech.com. My company website, and guys, we will record again in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Have a good one.